Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Leah. I'm between you facing the elements which are coming down, and some of you have to go a long way. I'll be very brief. And this is not a summary, because so much has been said, so many points have been made that are worth taking home, thinking about. I'll make only 3 points. Are we drifting apart? Of course, that is the central question. Various answers have been given. And of course, at the center, we have the NSA surveillance crisis. It was rightly pointed out that it's an old theme, drifting apart. Wolfgang Ischinger mentioned that he, as a young diplomat, had to write speeches. I can tell you that in 1963, when I came to Harvard here and worked at the Center for International Affairs, that was the theme. Henry Kissinger, for whom I worked at that time, wrote a book on that. And there have been lots of books on it. Rightly, it has been pointed out that the difference is that we are now not talking about differences in policy, but there is a difference in trust. It reaches not the usual people and the left protesting, but it goes through society. It includes the Friends of America. But let's not forget that the differences in policy of the past were very severe too. Just think of the Vietnam War. A whole generation was in the streets, not just in Europe, but here too. Or think of the Iraq War. Most of us remember that very, very well. I do. A very, very deep crisis. So, there were differences. The differences in policy were overcome. Shouldn't it not be possible to overcome this difference as well? My answer is yes. And I'll give you 3 reasons to think about. And they were all mentioned in one way or another. First of all, let's keep in mind what we have discussed here is a societal problem of the new age of information technology and digital connection. It is what the Germans call a gesellschaftspolitisches Problem. It's a societal problem. We all face it. It's a central challenge to the organization of democracy for the coming years. It will keep you busy and this conference busy for years to come. It's not a bilateral problem alone. It is one as well. But it is primarily a problem of modern society. We all have to face it. Our universities have to deal with it. They have started to do this. New centers are emerging. So, not just a German-American problem. Second reason, we are drifting together. We are drifting together into a new international environment of enormous conflicts, of non-state actors. Klaus Naumann gave a really brilliant tour d'horizon, of new kinds of conflicts. Some conflicts for which there's no solution. We didn't discuss them very much, but just think of the Syria problem. There's no solution around. In Munich, they were totally helpless. Others are very, very difficult. There may be solutions. Think of the Ukraine problem and others. But it's going to be a very difficult environment in the coming years. We may have not only conflict, but war in Asia. We don't know. So what does it mean? It means we drift together and have lots of common interests. As was rightly said, I think it was Phil Murphy, is there one major foreign policy area where Europe and America basically doesn't have the same basic interest? You can go through them. Iran, the Israeli-Palestinian problem, name them. There's some differences here and there, but basically we are on the same track and have very different views. Moreover, when you think of the fact that the US and Europe are the only large area in the world where war as a means of policy has been reliably excluded. We are a genuine peace system. We have developed since World War II something that has never been achieved in world history. We are peaceful with each other. We cooperate. We resolve problems. We have them. We have differences. We resolve them peacefully. That's the one point. The other point is we share the same values. We are democracies. We believe in human rights and the rights of the individual. We are a minority. We're a large area. We still have half of the world gross national product, but in terms of people, we are a minority and will be more and more a minority. And we are entering a century that's going to be pretty violent. So, as Klaus Naumann put it, there are lots of reasons to stick together, despite all the other differences that we still will have. A very powerful reason why, when we drift, we must drift together and mobilize the common interest and our cooperative tradition, which is very strong when you look at the way we deal with each other. And Norbert Lammert mentioned, for example, how much is going on between just the two parliaments, but that's just one example. And just look at yourself, how much exchange we have with each other, attending each other's universities, and the trade that we have with each other, the shared knowledge. Then there is a second reason. We are democracies, both sides, the US and Europe. Both of us have mechanisms to deal with excessive use of power. It's one of those odd things that when you look at the reporting in Europe on the NSA crisis, the US suddenly is like a monster. Yes, there has been abuse of power, but America is a democracy that deals with the problem. America has more control of surveillance than some European democracies. For example, Britain and France. There are mechanisms here which the British and the French do not have to protect the rights of the individual, although we have a problem that was referred to. There is a new problem here when we deal with the questions of surveillance. Basically, Mr. Lammert said, he quoted a book, we are all Americans, we are all foreigners somewhere else. So it is not enough to protect your own citizens. We are in a world that is interconnected, where we're foreigners everywhere else. So it's a problem for the democracies to address. And we are entering a gigantically interesting new age of trying to resolve that issue. And the governments of the Western democracies have to resolve it. A new Bill of Rights that crosses the border has to be developed. Very difficult. But it will be done. It will take time. The proposal has been made, for example, by the German Foreign Minister Steinmeier to institutionalize a link between the debate. And Susan Crawford rightly said, in this country, there's a very lively civil society that debates it. It's not just a German or a European problem, what's going on. It's an American problem too. And we have to link the two debates. And that's the essence of what happens in a democracy. Because, look at some other places. Do the Russians or the Chinese have a debate on surveillance? Of course not. Except for dissidents who don't agree with the way the system is handled. And the power elites in those countries may watch what we are doing here with a mixture of amusement and bafflement, and they may not understand it. I think, and somebody mentioned the deputy Chinese foreign minister in Munich, who said, well, it's not clear which system in the end is going to be the better one. We'll see. This is the one that we will have to resolve. But democracies will attack it, whereas the other systems just don't. And that is the difference. And that is why I am hopeful that the relationship, it will be affected, as was rightly said. It will even change here and there, but no drifting apart. We just cannot afford it. As Mr. Lammert said, unlike in personal relationships, there is no alternative. We have to be realistic and look at the world as it is. My second point, there is, referring to the debate we just had, there is one sector we are actually drifting apart. That's the energy price situation. Europe and America are in very different situations. Much cheaper energy here, much more expensive energy there. That may change, and we heard a lot about that it's likely to change. Some say it will change, but it's there, and it will be there for a number of years, and it has profound implications. It will suck investment away from Europe into this country. It has implications for the competitiveness of American industry as compared with European industry, particularly in the energy-intensive areas. Very, very important. Jobs are at stake. But it also has geopolitical consequences we must be aware of. First, it sustains the role of the United States as a major world power. It makes it easier to be the number one, as America has been in the past. And secondly, it affects the perceptions in some parts of the world. And Nick Burns actually referred to it. It has usually been overestimated, yes. Some people argue in the Middle East and also elsewhere that as America enters a phase of potential energy independence, it's no longer interested in the Middle East and in playing a stabilizing role. I think it's wrong, because it's a world market, and there are strategic interests in addition to the energy side of the United States being in that area. But it affects the perception of the US, particularly in combination with the so-called pivot or the rebalancing toward Asia, a retrenchment. It's a problem for the United States and also for the Europeans to deal with. And in that connection, the Energiewende that we have now discussed, it's a phenomenal project. The outcome is still not yet certain. It is Germany's Man on the Moon project. But as I said, actually last time, everybody watches Germany, and we can only hope it doesn't turn out to be like the Berlin airport. So, it's a gigantic problem that is coming up, and the world is watching. One can only hope and wish that it will work out. It is Germany's Man on the Moon project. My concluding point, because my time is up, we have greatly debated the change in Germany's perception of its responsibility in the world. Reference was made to this really magnificent speech of the Federal President Gauck. I recommend, you can see it on the website of the Bundespräsidialamt. It's really worth reading. It's also available in English and in French. And what Foreign Minister Steinmeier and Defense Minister von der Leyen said in Munich. And I was there and could see also the reaction. It's rather fundamental. Because it basically says we simply cannot afford anymore to look away and to leave the certain problems to the others, to our friends and allies. We have to assume greater responsibility, because this is a democratic Germany that can do it and that has the trust to do it. Tim Garton-Ash, about 3 months ago, published a piece in the New York Review of Book, where he spoke of the new German problem. The new German question, the new German question. What is the new German question? It is the difficulty of Germany to rid itself of the consequences of the old German question, the past, and to step into the future and into the new responsibilities. Because the old German problem, what was left over, stifles the capacity of German society and German politics to do what Germany has to do under the present circumstances. So we are at the dawn of a very important new development in Europe, namely a redefinition of Germany's role in that part of the world. But at the end of the day, it's not words and concepts and announcements that matter, but it's action. We'll see. Next year, when we hopefully meet here again, we will hopefully be able to talk about what followed after these important statements that that the representatives of Germany made. The action will hopefully come, but there's also consensus about 2 points. If action comes, it must be within the European Union and only with the European Union. Secondly, when it comes to global problems, there is no alternative but to do it with our old ally, namely the United States. And that's another reason why there will not be a drifting apart. And in conclusion, I would like to say that as a member of the faculty here, we are very proud that this conference was organized by students, not only students of the Kennedy School and of Harvard, but also of other universities. I would like to congratulate you, to thank you, and in particular Mirko and Lea, but also all the others. And with that, I think we'll have to let you go into the snow and safe travel home.